the other capacities that are available in the army, I think on a scale of 100, we are only using 10 of them. And I think we need to bring in that confidence that yes, there is somebody who's looking after the needs of the people.
Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhary. Thanks for watching Inquiry. It's many weeks since I put out a conversation, and that's because my entire family has been down with COVID, and some of us have had a very severe bout. What this has done is it's brought us close to the tragic and harrowing experience that thousands and lakhs of people are suffering in the country even as we speak. There's a mad scramble for nurses, doctors, beds, medicines, oxygen, basic tests, everything that is required as a response to this disease. In fact, it is the absence of response rather than the disease itself which is proving to be so lethal. There's a dismaying sense of a missing leadership, a sense that there is no one in the control room. And even as we're seeing cremation pyres burning and the top hospitals in this country, in the national capital, losing patients and doctors because oxygen is running out, and still several weeks into the crisis, the situation does not seem in control. Worse still, there's a sense that this is going to further escalate. And even though we were already caught napping, we still seem to be sleeping on the job. The government is clearly not doing enough. So, what is the solution? What can happen that is not yet happening? To answer that question, I'm delighted to have with me on the show General Huda, who was the former head of the Northern Command of the Indian Army. He's overseen many crises in the country. He oversaw the celebrated surgical strike into Pakistan, and I will be speaking to him about what the army can do if it is deployed in this crisis, whether the government is deploying it sufficiently, and what are the solutions that he suggests. Thank you very much for joining me on the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Shoma.
So, General Huda, I wanted to speak with you because personally, my entire family has been down with COVID, and my husband had a very, very severe bout. So I've seen this up close, and subsequently, one is seeing the panic continue, and this absence of resource, and this is in the national capital. So I want to start with your own sense of the crisis. How do you assess it, and what do you think is the thing that shocks you most about what we are going through?
So, Shoma, we all know it's a nationwide crisis. It's hitting us very, very badly. I think for me, singularly, what's notable is, the fact that there is a great deal of sort of uncertainty and fear among the people as to where they will go. As you mentioned, the lack of resources. Now, I know there are two sides to it, and whether the resources are actually insufficient or not reaching the place where it should. Whatever be the reason, the fact is that the common man is, immensely sort of suffering on ground. And so, some of the scenes that you see are really heartrending.
But actually, there aren't two sides to this. Yes, India is an oxygen surplus country, but the point is it's not reaching where the crisis is. And like I said, what we are witnessing is 14, 15, possibly 3 weeks into a crisis in the national capital. To understand that is like what is happening in the hinterlands if this is this condition in the capital, So I think the fact that there's an absence of resource, there can be no two sides to that story, sir. So
yeah, true, Shoma. What you said is right. I mean, they're not reaching where they need to get to, and so therefore, obviously, people who are really suffering are the ones who are finding that shortage, to be life-threatening in many cases.
So, an important thing would be to use the correct vocabulary for this so that the level of emergency and response on it changes. What is the vocabulary? Do you think we are in a national emergency? Would you call this a war with the virus? What is the correct framework we need to give this for the government to be responding more accurately to it?
I think it's an absolute national emergency, Shoma. And, we have a document called the Union War Book. What happens is in the event of war, it's obviously again a national emergency when war is declared. The Union War Book, sort of gives out procedures and rules of how various the actions to be taken by various organs of the government. What are the ministries supposed to do? Uh, I think something like that on that footing needs to be looked at. Invoke emergency provisions to deal with it, so that every ministry works together. This is not merely as we are saying, this is not merely a sort of a health crisis. It's also transportation. It's also the logistics. It's also our communication strategy of bringing confidence among people. So I think all ministries need to sort of work together. How is the data being sort of compiled? Are we getting accurate enough data? So I think all the ministries need to work together, and not merely as look, it's a health issue and therefore the health ministry will deal with it.
Yeah, and it's also going to become an escalating economic crisis, because there's just so many families
True.
that are incapacitated. Again, businesses are going into lockdown. If this continues, there might be a third wave. So, which brings me to another question, sir, that this I'm asking out of complete lack of knowledge, that the intelligence bureau, the military intelligence, all the organs of surveillance and advance warning that we get, is a health emergency of this nature not part of their mandate? Would they not have given intelligence inputs to the government that there could be a crisis brewing and one should? Is this an intelligence failure, or do you think it's a lack of government response to an intelligence input? Is it part of their mandate to?
Yeah. So frankly, Shoma, right now it is not part of the military intelligence, for example, to look at these kind of threats. But I think you raised a very, very crucial issue, because we now need to start expanding on what our understanding of security is, what our understanding of threats is. And therefore, there is a need, I think, for agencies also to start looking at these kind of challenges and these kind of threats, so that we are better prepared for it. I think I'm not sure it. We didn't know that it will come. I mean, every country in the world was going through a second wave, so the possibility was always there that it would come. I think there were other actions and other things that actually helped spread it more than it should have spread. So
I
I,
think
I won't I won't I would I would say it's an intelligence failure. I think all intelligent people did see it coming. It wasn't as if it was going to be a big surprise or something. Just
I
that I
think
think we let our guard down too early. Yeah.
I think it's an intelligence failure of a different kind, which is that you have
Okay.
a explosive situation growing and you suspend your intelligence and you have massive rallies and you have massive, Kumbh Mela gatherings. It is an intelligence failure at a different level altogether, sir.
Yeah.
So, sir, the question I want to ask you is that, what can the army do? Recently, of course, the last couple of days, the government has enlisted the army and brought them in. But do you think the army is being deployed sufficiently to manage a crisis like this? What are the clauses under which the army can participate? And is it being deployed to the level that it can to manage such a huge disaster in the country?
So Shoma, to answer, the first part of your question is, can the army be brought in? Certainly. There are rules, government rules. There is a clause on aid to civil authority, which mandates that the army can be brought in case of disaster relief, maintenance of essential services, etc. So there is absolutely no hitch to deploying the army for these kind of roles and these kind of duties. Is it being deployed in sufficient numbers? I think there is enormous capacity in the army to handle situations like this. Not merely the health part, but other areas like logistics and data management, etc., etc. And that's where I think the army needs to come in, and all three services need to come in a much bigger way. Because as I said, there is expertise, there is leadership, there is capacity that is there in the army, and we can talk about that in detail as we go ahead. Certainly, in a crisis of this nature, uh, and let us not look at this as something which is apart from national security. Frankly, I mean, a nation's security is when the nationals of the country are safe. And so we are facing a national security crisis apart from a health crisis. And therefore, I think the army needs to come in a much larger way.
So that's really crucial, sir, because one is feeling that gap. There seems to be no war room, no visible task force, which is really coordinating, not just for the capital, but there are other crisis centers. So can you spell out, what can the army really do in all its capacities? So let's start with the biggest crying, visible crisis is the absence of oxygen reaching. We've seen horrible situations where some of the biggest hospitals in the country where patients and top doctors have died because of lack of oxygen. So let's go on the oxygen issue first. What could the army
Okay.
be doing?
Yeah. Okay. So before I come specifically to the oxygen issue, Shoma, let me tell you, I think one of the biggest sort of skills and ability in the army is it's completely a self-sustained organization. While I'm saying it's a self-sustained organization, I mean the organization not only has, we normally look at fighting soldiers and say, oh, this is our army, but the army is actually comprised of experts who are there in engineering, who can set up infrastructure, health facilities, extensive health and medical network which is there. There is an extensive logistic network of your own vehicles, of your own supplies. You can set up your own communication centers and provide sort of direct one-to-one communication where it is required. Uh, so all this capacity exists, and therefore I think this needs to be utilized. And as I said earlier, the fact that the army is handled crises like this before. I personally been involved in the 2005 earthquake, the 2014 floods in Jammu and Kashmir. So the army has enormous capacity. And let's take this oxygen, supply as an example. And I think what needs to be done, and you also mentioned we're an oxygen surplus country. The fact is the oxygen is not reaching the right place. Is how to manage that network and streamline the supply lines. So put people at the right places, say at the oxygen plants from where it is, set up a control center at Delhi, have your own dedicated communication network which connects the hospitals, the oxygen plants, compile what the requirement is, pass it to your representatives at the oxygen plants, track the supplies. I mean, today's technology is so advanced. I mean, you really don't, I mean, you have a GPS on your phone. So tracking each and every container is possible. You just need somebody who's sitting and coordinating and looking at this network, set up checkpoints along various routes so that when each tanker or train is passing, you know exactly where it is, how long it will take. I think it'll bring in a lot of transparency. It'll streamline this whole network. In some ways, I think with the presence of uniformed people, this whole black marketing, et cetera, or pressure from various states on the oxygen plants will go away. So I'm just giving a small example, but these are things that can be done to sort of streamline, just the supply and delivery of oxygen.
I just want to stick with this question about oxygen a little more. You said the coordination can become better, the tracking can become better, but also a big issue is about the swiftness of delivery of oxygen right now. So, in what way, we are running a few oxygen trains, but it's taking 5, 6 days. Can you see any way that the army can step in to speed up that delivery?
Sure. I mean, you use your own your own fleet of transport. Now, when we are just looking at the turnaround time, so which is one train takes 3 days going and 3 days coming, and therefore it's taking 6 days. But if you have a train every day, irrespective of the first lot will take 6 days, but after that you're going to get a train every day. So I think it's just a matter of deploying sufficient resources, and then you can have you have 2 trains a day, and then you have 2 trains a day coming in. So I think it's just a matter of how you deploy your resources, how you efficiently track them, whether you're able to get everything in the right place. And that coordination, I think, is something that is required more than. It's not as if India doesn't have the rolling stock or trains or transport to move these things. So it's just that sufficient assets get deployed. Uh, you can have vehicles arriving every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes. I mean, it's just a matter of how many trucks you put in place, and what's your capacity to produce the oxygen. So, and I think we are getting even from foreign aid, a lot of things are coming in. So again, as I said, to me, it's more a matter of procedures and streamlining the whole system.
So, sir, it's inexplicable why, when you're saying that this capacity exists within the country, why it's not being deployed. So, one, as we said, that in the last couple of days, the defense minister has given emergency financial powers to the army, and some warships and etc. have been deployed. Some field hospitals are being set up. But if you study what is being done so far, just on a scale of percentage, how much do you think the army is being deployed compared to how much it can be deployed?
So I think if you honestly ask me, the medical resources of the army are sort of almost sort of fully stretched because you have your own patients and this thing. But as I said, the other capacities that are available in the army, I think on a scale of 100, we are only using 10 of them. So we need to bring in skilled manpower. We need to bring in leadership. We need to set up, control centers to be able to coordinate all this activity. So I don't think, as you also said, that I don't think it's a matter of capacity. I think it's more a matter of how we coordinate and move these things and get them to the right place. And as I said, the army has very skilled people in supply chain management and logistics, etc. I mean, why are we not sort of utilizing these people?
So, sir, as I just said, over the last few days, there's a sense that the government has deployed the army. But when you're saying it's on a scale of 10 on 100 of how it could be deployed, how do you think the government is, and what's wrong with, or what is, insufficient about the way the government's deploying it right now?
So I'm aware that at various states and various levels, the army and the political leadership at the state level has been talking about support, and the army has given support. But I think it's in bits and pieces. So setting up some hospital facilities, giving some space for civilians in military hospitals, etc. So the real capacity of the army as an organization to be able to deal with the crisis, I think that capability is not being exploited enough. So we are using sort of generalists, if I may use that word, to manage all this when you have experts who are available within the military.
No, in fact, to me, it's not just because it's personal, but subsequent to my entire family suffering this. And the sheer, one was scrambling for concentrators, for oxygen, for cylinders, for ambulances, for medicine, for beds, for doctors. Like every link in the chain is broken, and yet we haven't even declared this a national emergency yet, so it's very piecemeal. So, sir, I want to ask you, you've made a very strong statement about what can be done. Describe a war room that you would set up, looking at the entire chain of what needs to be done. If you were heading and you were tasked to manage this countrywide, what is the kind of war room you would set up? What different components would that war room have?
So, I think the first thing that needs to be done and that needs to be understood is, we need to stop this sort of spread of panic. And I think we need to bring in that confidence that, yes, there is somebody who's looking after the needs of the people. And that will come in when they see a sort of a viable, visible organizational structure being put in place in whom they have confidence. And I'm not because I'm from the army, but the fact is that people do have a fair amount of confidence in the military. So when they see a military organization come to their help, they do understand that, yes, here is an efficient organization that will deal with it. What will it consist of? How will it be sort of composed and organized? Shoma, the first thing is you need a dedicated communication countrywide network. So, and the army has its own network. It also has the ability to quickly set up, what we call secure communications, data centers, etc. There used to be a term, when computers initially came, it used to be called garbage in, garbage out. Now, if you're not getting accurate information out from the field, from the districts, I think the planning is not going to be great. So the first thing that needs to be done is to set up a good dedicated communication network with nodal officers at various places from where you are getting correct information about what is happening, at various places. The second thing is, generally in the army, the teams are organized into three groups. The first is called the operational group, which does the day-to-day activities. So they are the ones who are burning the phone line, seeing what is happening, is everything reaching at the right place, passing information to people down the chain or up the chain, informing them. They are the ones who deal with the day-to-day activity. The second team is called the planning team, and I think that's equally crucial. These are people who work in the background and they're looking ahead. So they may be looking 1 week, 10 days ahead. Because the operational team is so busy with management of day-to-day things, they don't have time to look ahead. These are people who are anticipating, looking ahead, maybe looking at future hotspots, looking at areas that have not been addressed enough, so that suddenly we don't come up with a situation that we have not anticipated. So you need a planning team that's completely away from the day-to-day functioning and looking ahead. And finally, the logistics people, because you can plan anything unless you are able to get things at the right place. And when I'm talking of the logistic team, I'm including the health workers, the health staff, and how the hospitals are being managed, how the medicines are coming in, how the oxygen is coming in. We have the infrastructure people, where quickly, if you are required to deploy and build some infrastructure, that can get sort of created. You have the supply chain people, etc. So these are the broad sort of three components, I think, of a war room. One set of people to deal with day to day, one set of people to look ahead and anticipate things, and then the logistics people who have to get things where they're required. So I mean, that's the kind of setup, and a visible setup. I also say, I'm sorry I'm saying this, depoliticize the whole relief effort, and that can surely happen if people see that there are some element of armed forces involvement in the relief work.
No, absolutely. So I mean, from day one, I've been tweeting, let's bring in the army, because this is a disaster. And like you said, whether it's earthquakes, it's typhoons, cyclones, the army is there. So it's really inexplicable why there's such low deployment of the army in this circumstance. But so one other thing is that, in many places in the capital, it's an absence of coordination and access to resource. But in many parts of India, there's possibly not even the resources, in terms of hospitals or oxygen beds, etc. So, like China put up that hospital in 2-3 days. Do we have the capacity to do that? Can the army set up on-site hospitals, and what would be the turnaround time in that?
So Shama, I think what's needed. Yes, there is a requirement at some places to set up 1,000, 10,000 bed hospitals. I think we need to look more carefully at rural areas where actually, the health infrastructure is very, very poor, and I'm not sure they're getting anything. And I think that's where also lies the strength of the army. So we have what are called field hospitals, not very large hospitals, but these are meant for wartime. And so they're sort of the equipment, the beds, and everything is packed up and kept. These can be very quickly deployed in a matter of hours, not days.
Wow.
And so I think areas, where medical facilities are stressed or there isn't enough capacity, the field hospitals can go in. These are not, as I said, these are not very large facilities, but at least call them, the first line of health services for the local population, for the rural population. They can come in there, they can get tested, limited hospitalization, they can get referred. At least there will be, as I said, we need to build confidence that yes, I am being looked after.
Yes, that's
And so I think these field hospitals in some remote areas can be deployed. Later, when we have enough vaccines available, they can also help with the vaccination, etc. But yes, there is a doctor there, there is a nursing assistant, there is a facility which is efficient and well run. And so, as I said, to restore confidence of the people, I think these are facilities that can be deployed.
So, sir, another question many people might ask is that given our armies, we have so many borders, and army has commitments in many parts of, sensitive areas of the country. Do we, despite that, have enough capacity to deal with a calamity of this scale nationwide? Or would it mean
So,
with
Shoma, so obviously, I mean, the crisis is so large that merely deploying the army is not going to provide all the answers. I mean, obviously, so the army can certainly help. But on your specific question of can we look after the borders and also assist with relief in this crisis, the answer is a big yes. We can. There is enough capacity. Yes, the borders people are deployed, but there are enough people in what we call peace stations uh, who are there. There is enough medical facility. There are other facilities that are available. So certainly, I think we can deploy more of the army despite our commitment on the borders.
I think, so listening to you, the one thing, if one were to sum it up, is that the army can provide leadership, which right now, frankly, one is missing, very, very deeply and very acutely. There's no sense of leadership that is looking at the calamity and dealing with it, So there's been a positive story out of Bombay where just one municipal commissioner like created a grid of the entire city, broke it up into 24 areas, micro managed each district. And just that has been able to bring the crisis in Bombay into control. And I think a lot of people are praising his specific leadership in just mapping it out and deploying resources. So we need that at a country level scale.
Sure, Shoma. As I said, this is where the army excels in its ability to organize itself. It has a very clear sort of command control structure. It has inbuilt capacity within itself, to deal with. So you're not running around that, you deployed somewhere. Now, where will your food come from? Where will your petrol come from? All these, where will your clothes come from? I mean, who's going to build roads for you? That capacity completely sort of exists within the army, and the leadership and the ability to deal with situations like this, effective communication network, accurate information coming in. I think these are areas where the army can certainly help.
So, sir, and you said one other big thing would be of anticipation. I feel like personally, again, scared at the at least seeming absence of anticipation. We already knew the virus, the new mutant virus had come in October, November. Maharashtra started to blow up, Gujarat started to blow up, Delhi blew up, and yet we continued with elections and Kumbh Mela and all of that. Now there's a sense that Bengal, UP, Uttarakhand, these areas will blow up, but there doesn't seem to be any real focus. So you just watching even from the sidelines, what can you foresee? What do you think we are still napping on, which might happen and which you can foresee right now? How
So I think so to me, I think the big worry is the rural areas, because I think sufficient information is sort of not coming. So in all the urban centers, you have the media sort of covering everything, and we are seeing what exactly is happening. Uh, the health infrastructure is also to some extent being ramped up. I know this is still insufficient for the kind of cases that we have. What is happening in rural areas is really a sort of question mark. Is there enough testing that is happening there? If there are deaths which are occurring in those areas, I mean, are they related to corona or not? So those, I think there is an absence of information. I don't know. Maybe the government has much more info than I do, but that's the sense that I get from what I see and what I read.
But so you mentioned that you looked after the 2005 earthquake. Can you think of any equivalent scale of crisis like this, where in a domestic situation the army has stepped in? Would you think of
So
anything equivalent, or is this
at,
so
at,
far
at,
so
at a at a nationwide level, Shama, I can't think of any situation which sort of parallels what we are going through now. Locally, yes, you could say. So I was in Uri when the 2005 earthquake took place, and the devastation in that area around Uri was enormous. So, uh, I mean, horrifying scenes in that area. But it was localized, and yes, we were completely cut off. Roads, communication, telephone links, everything was snapped for about 10-15 days, it's completely on our own and trying to help out the local civil population and all the casualties, etc., etc. Uh, but as I said, that was a local event. We did a good job. We were stressed for a few days, initially when it was going on. But I think the scale of the current pandemic is unparalleled.
So, sir, I know that you're not in the seat of action, but you have got a good sense of the scale of crisis, the spread of crisis. If I were to give you an estimate that if the army was brought in, you said right now it's only being used on a scale of 10 on 100 in terms of capacity. If it was brought in full capacity, as you would like it deployed, how many days would you think it would take to turn around the whole thing and bring a sense of order and delivery and coordination into it?
See, it depends on how the army wants to, how the government wants to use the army. I mean, you want to use it in a limited way, so localized to Delhi, localized to oxygen transportation. Do you want to deploy it on a nationwide scale? What mandate would you give it? So the army itself is in every nook and corner of the country, and so quickly at district or within two districts, it can set up control centers. It has existing communication networks. You can have a dedicated sort of COVID network, communication network, giving you correct information. So the time to deploy is not an issue. I think the thing is, what task does the government visualize, for the army to do? Look at it in a limited way to sort out problems in a specific area, or give it a wider role. I mean, I really can't say what the
But
government
I
will
asked,
want to do.
I asked that if it was deployed, if you were given a free hand as the army and were deployed at scale 100, how much time, seeing you have a fair sense of the mess, how many days do you think it would take for the army to take over?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, uh, how many further cases are you going to get? How soon it will go down? You don't know. I think what the army will be able to do, as I said, is streamline some of the procedures, bring in efficiency, and also give you a little wider coverage in areas where currently the health facilities are limited. So that's where I think the army can help. But to give any estimate of so many days, and after all, I think we should also not get away with the idea, that the army is the answer to all our problems. It isn't. So it can help, but much more sort of effort is required from all government agencies.
Thank you very much. So, if I were to just leave you with one last sort of a summing up sense that at this point, if you were to really wish for one thing from the government, which it is not doing, what would that be?
That's a difficult question. I think bring in greater transparency and show greater visibility of sort of concern for people. I think some of the statements that are coming out, uh, just show empathy, show concern, and greater visibility and greater transparency. I think the confidence of the common man needs to get built up. I mean, that's what I am seeing, is that that fear, that uncertainty that is there in the minds of people, that needs to go. Uh, and the confidence that here is the government that cares for us, that must come in.
If I were to say, I think the biggest fear right now is a sense of a completely missing government. There's doesn't seem to be anyone sitting in the seat of leadership. And in fact, you have a sense that the Solicitor General, they're going to the Supreme Court asking it to withdraw orders about delivery of oxygen. It's going after embassies and tweets, and it seems like its priorities are completely,
True.
you know, there's a real sense of missing leadership right now. So thank you very much, sir. I hope people watching this interview will take your advice seriously and that we ramp up. Like you said, there's a great sense of confidence in the army's capacity to mitigate crisis, and I hope it's deployed in greater measure. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Shoma. Thank you. Great pleasure. Bye bye.